My job as an integrative primary care doctor is to make sure that there isn't an impending problem that will lead to death or disability. And then also to kind of define which of the multiple medical problems that my patients are coming in with is the most important and which can usually get put to the back of the line. In taking over this new clinic, it brought me back into primary care, and I've also had to cover for other doctors that have been sick. And I see their patients, I go through the medical charts, and then I review a lot of their prescriptions. I'll have 40 to 50-year-old patients coming in with at least 5 different medications, all for preventable diseases. That means you should be able to reverse the disease, but a lot of patients will be so used to or so empowered to just take the prescriptions and not change life that, well, I really think that eventually they're going to outrun their medicines. As I mentioned in other videos, if you're okay with, say, at your age group, or you're okay with your current weight, your current sedentary life, and the medicines you're taking are controlling the flare-ups or the symptoms, that's great. The medicines will stay the same. Your metabolic rate will probably change. You're definitely going to get older. And sooner or later, the medicine protocols or the medicine cocktails you're using to make life doable in your 30s won't work when you're 40. Or the stuff that you used to in your 40s and 50s will not work in your 60s and 70s. So then it comes back to, okay, well, you should introduce relaxation therapy or some form of relaxation practice, some form of activity, and then some form of nutrition practice. I wanted to talk about clean and green this time. And with trying to introduce a different style of eating, it is kind of limited because it depends on what you're comfortable with. If you don't have any idea about how to cook, how to throttle a burner on a stove, how to watch and see if meats are cooked properly, or know when to turn down a simmer from a boil, then it's very important to experiment. If you're privileged enough, like I am, to have somebody you're married to that's very good with their cooking, and they cook from scratch, and it's all within 15 minutes, then you should be set. I mean, I'd still learn how to cook on your own anyway, but it wasn't until my mom passed away that I started to experiment with cooking. So I started with the easy things. I started with grains. In a Filipino household, you usually have a rice cooker, and one of the kids is always told to make the rice. And then mom will prepare from scratch the other part of your meal. So we make the carbohydrates, and nowadays I use more than rice. In my last video, I'll put a link to it. I like using whole grains instead of breads nowadays. I'll occasionally dip into the bread or the tortilla, but I think that there's more value in whole grains, plus you know how to prepare these things. In bread, especially bread that's made to sit on the shelf for several months to years, you have to have some things in it and some things taken out. And I really think if you take care of your own grains, you're better off. You also should know to take advantage of the harvest of your season. Now it's spring going into summer in Chicago, and you have a bounty of different fruits and vegetables that are available that you can mess around with. I think knowing the basics with regards to onion and garlic is really important. I think a lot of the things that we first saute with, using olive oil in a pan, chopping up some onion and garlic, and then using whatever you want, whether it's vegetables, sauteing fish, sauteing meat if you have to. It all starts with some of the basics, and that's where I guess I should encourage people is if you're not used to cooking, or if you don't cook from scratch, start with the easiest dishes you can find, whether it's on the internet or in books. This is John LaPuma's book. He used to be a physician out of Alexian Brothers in Hoffman Estates, St. Alexis actually, and I met him once and he signed my cool book. But if you look, he even has a website. Not only is the book pretty good with regards to recipes and ideas about the anti-inflammatory diet, but he's also a physician that went on to get a culinary degree. And on his website, Chef MD, he has a lot of different options that you can learn and follow him with. So that would be the easiest thing if you're not used to being in the kitchen, is to just see what you have available. Learn with the easiest things possible. That might mean making soup. Or again, like with amaranth, this is a grain that you usually find in ancient grain bread. Amaranth is a little bit different when it comes to boiling this stuff compared to quinoa, or definitely compared to farro. So you got to learn, and you're probably going to burn some pots or score some pots. You know, so what? You'll learn. But you have to be comfortable with the flame and the heat. Once you're comfortable, then you can get into more detailed recipes. All these books all involve cooking from scratch, cooking organic. There's Walter Willett's book, Eat, Drink, and Weigh Less. He has some easy ones and some hard ones. If you go for the biggest recipes with the most ingredients first and the most steps, you're going to get frustrated. Pick something that's real easy. And then you can watch the Food Network. I've watched Rick Bayless several times, and I think his cooking style is great with regards to Mexican food. In fact, one of the first things that introduced me to Andy Weil's fellowship in integrative medicine was when they came to Chicago and had a nutritional conference. It was him, Dr. Katz out of Yale, I believe, and then Rick Bayless, and they were talking about how manipulating food will help the disease process. And Andy is wise as usual. Katz was good with his way in. And Rick gave more of the social suggestions that you can't take the feast out of the social get-togethers. We often talk about this stuff being all broken down into macronutrients, proteins, carbs, and fats. And that's how you should treat your food. That's how you should treat 3 meals a day and 2 to 3 snacks a day. But when you make it that mechanical, you take the love out of food. And if you look at, say, Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, you still honor the food and where it came from. It came from the ground. It was raised properly by a farmer, or the cattle was taken care of, or the chickens were honored, so the fish was caught. But there's all energy that comes from the sun, that comes from growing, comes from life. And that's, if you do things properly, and you cook properly, and you honor where these things came from, you'll also have a good meal. And not only do you have a good meal that you take part in, but you also have, in a social gathering, the benefits of that. If you look at Dan Buettner's work with the oldest groups or societies in the world leading to 100 years of age or more, they all had in them the same idea of everybody eats at the table, and there's always a family gathering. So there is value. I don't want to go into it too deep, but there is value in the social aspect, like what Rick was saying, of eating. So it's not just the mechanics of knowing how to cook, it's also the process of knowing how to share and how to take part and teach other people. There's benefits into that. I think it really slows down that mindless eating you do when you're by yourself or at a computer. It also helps you encourage speaking, and with speaking, again, you slow down the meal, smiling, laughing, cherishing those times together. I think there's benefits to that with regards to the serotonin response. So that being said, if you're not that great or don't have the enthusiasm to learn, then you'll have to go with what I call MREs, and I'll put a link. Everybody that's read my video or watched my videos will know I always go to MREs, or meals ready to eat. Now if you have, especially as a truck driver or somebody that's going to be stuck in traffic a lot, or traveling and flying a lot, you want to know what things you can get to keep it either in the truck, in the hotel room, in the car, in the trunk, or in the office. For those times when you're running behind, you don't have time to go out and eat. You don't want to starve. I know you can tolerate that, waiting a couple hours. Anybody can tolerate it, but you should know what happens with the hormone cascade of just waiting. If you wait, usually there's a hormone that's triggered that will make you hunt, and that's fine. It'll make you want to, you'll have the thungries, or the hunger pangs of the belly, and you'll want to search for food. But the problem is, if that's already started, that cascade will get you to the point where even if you found the food, it'll be very hard to stop, because the body will keep on saying, even after you're full, continue to eat more and more. And that's where the problem comes with people who eat 1 or 2 meals a day. So meals ready to eat, better than going hungry. And you don't have to have large volume. This is 1 serving of sardines, great omega-3, ready to go. Tuna fish, to a limited degree, can have some. And now again, portability is so great. All you have to do is pick this thing off the shelf, put it in your bag, and you can just keep it in your bag as a meal ready to eat whenever you want. So if you can't find anything and it's wintertime, then you've got the frozen stuff. But if you're going to find frozen vegetables or frozen fruit, try to get something that has a minimal amount of ingredients. Again, the least amount of processing would be important. Know what's available to you. Try to get used to it. I'm not saying just rely on this stuff. I will usually take part of this stuff, have it during my day at least 3 to 4 times, and then go home to a meal either that we all share or that my wife prepares or that I get ready. So that's the way I think I live my life in a healthy way, and that's the way I try to encourage patients. But again, everybody's a little different. Worst thing you can do is rely on these pre-packaged meals that you can cook in 15 minutes. I love P.F. Chang's, but just to have this in the bag, you know it's got to have preservatives, high amounts of salt to kill the bacteria, and it just is unhealthy. If you're going to do it every once a month, that's reasonable, but to rely on it every day of the week, you're asking for trouble. Yes, fast food and that stuff is pretty cheap, and you will save in the short run, but I guarantee you, you keep that up, you're going to pay in the co-pays that you have to either see me or the registered dietitian or the cardiologist for the bypass or the cancer doctor for cutting out the tumor or radiating the tumor that you got from not eating properly. Yes, good nutrition leads to good health and longevity. Bad nutrition leads to the disease process, the mountain will be pulled closer to you faster. So if you're trying to kind of push back the disease process until you're 90 years of age, then embark on a nutrition practice that's healthy. Learn as best as possible. And I have to caution you, the books really have to be learned and read cover to cover. Chris Gardner found that when it came to authors that were popular, I'm not going to mention all of them, but he had a study where he had patients and registered dietitians go through the book cover to cover, answering all questions. That's with a registered dietitian, and having the knowledge of that specific author, following the author's methods for at least 12 months. But in most of the cases, people would drop off the practice of that type of nutrition after about 12 months. There was one author that I think was easier to follow and had some success, but even the folks that followed him usually dropped off. So you have to have something personally designed. You take the authors that you like, you learn, you tweak it a little bit every 3 months. I always say, if you're going to make a lifestyle change, shoot for 3 months and then reassess after that, make another lifestyle change and keep on daisy chaining that until you get to a couple years where you're comfortable and you're healthy. But to stick with one author that's essentially a restrictive diet, I would just, if you can do it, God bless you, but at your birthday every year I would just check in, or at New Year's every year I would just check in with yourself and see if your waistline is the same, if your blood test numbers are the same, if your blood pressure is the same, if your tolerance for the daily stressors of life are all the same, relationships all the same, then fine, continue on your path for another year. But if things are kind of falling off the wagon, you might want to reassess and pick a different lifestyle or a different author. And if you're still unsure, you come see me or one of my integrative fellows that came from the Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, and you try to get an outside opinion that says you're still on the right track. There are things you can do with regards to blood tests that say that you are healthy right now. There are other things and other inflammatory markers like CRP, homocysteine, sedimentation rate, other fancy things you can get, even telomere testing to see if you are shortening your genes. So that usually refers to damage from either no healthy lifestyle or forced bad lifestyle. Anyway, there's ways that you can get help. If you're by yourself, you're alone, and or you're frustrated, stop your attempt, kind of refocus, and then get help on redesigning where your next summit will be.